Hello, everyone, and welcome to Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin, and today I'll be discussing Cinecon 59 that I just went to this past week, and also the films I reviewed and just the venue itself. So, to get started, let me tell you a little bit about what Cinecon is, and this is from their website. What is Cinecon? If you've never been to a Cinecon, you may ask, what is it all about? Well, taking place in the heart of Hollywood, Cinecon is a 5-day celebration of film featuring screenings, celebrity guests, and other special programs. This Labor Day weekend, beginning Thursday night, September 1st, and continuing through Monday afternoon, September 5th, film fans attending the show will be treated to many rare features and shorts and have an opportunity to join additional special programs unique to Cinecon. Okay, so that's what Cinecon is. This is my second time going. Last year it was at the Hollywood Legion Theater, and this year it was at the El Segundo Theater called the Old Music Hall. Since 1968, Old Town Music Hall has been showing vintage silent and sound films and presenting live concerts by some of the world's finest performers of jazz, ragtime, and popular music of the past. Silent films are accompanied by the mighty Wurlitzer, a massive 1925 wind-powered pipe organ that has been meticulously preserved so that silent classics can be experienced with live musical accompaniment. It's a small building and, very tight rooms, I should say, but it's a really cool theater. I mean, it's got beautiful ceilings and the craftsmanship of the inside of the building is really, really cool. So if you have a chance, I highly recommend checking it out. They got great events all the time, like they mentioned on their website, throughout the year. So I even got a schedule from them to see what else they're premiering this year, and I'm really, really excited to check it out again. It's a really cool venue, but like I said, keep in mind, it is a very small building, and so they sell out pretty quick. And so now let me talk about each of the films and shorts that I saw at Cinecon. And again, what's really cool about these is most of them haven't been seen since they were premiered back in the time period they were at. So I have like silent films I saw a television movie, theatrical films, and so forth. So this is a really, really cool time. So let me talk about the first part, which is some Laurel and Hardy short films. So I knew about Laurel and Hardy. I've heard of them before, but I've never really seen any of their shorts before. What they were trying to get people interested in was purchasing this right here, which is Laurel and Hardy Year One, which is a collection from Flickr Alley, who's kind of similar to like a Criterion or one of those. And this has a bunch of the shorts on it, but they showcase 3 of them just to get people excited and intrigued into buying this. And well, I'll just say I really enjoyed it because I ended up buying it. But let me tell you about the first short. It's called Sugar Daddies, and this is from 1927. So a little caveat here. All of these have been restored from several elements. They mentioned that there were some that used up to 8 different elements just to make the short film watchable. Because the thing about film that I've mentioned many times is it deteriorates over time. The emulsion separates from the film negatives and goes through what they call the vinegar process, where it starts to smell really bad, and sometimes it combusts and catches on fire. So in history, there have been several fires that have occurred at various studios. So finding these is a very rare gem, and really cool that they're able to do so. But yeah, because of that, they need to use different sources for missing scenes or very damaged scenes. And sometimes it's seamless, sometimes it's not. It's seamless when it's just 35 millimeter prints, but sometimes they have to use 16, which is a lot smaller and deteriorates a lot quicker than 35 millimeter does. So yeah, that's a little history on that. But let me tell you about Sugar Daddies from 1927. So I gave it a 3 out of 5. I thought it was funny. I thought it was a fun short gag. But Laurel, he's dressed up as a woman and he's on the shoulders of a mustache guy. And that's like 90% of the short. I want to say it's probably 6 or 7 minutes long. Think of it like a Tom and Jerry or a Looney Tunes short. This is kind of what that is like. I wish they used the gag once and then continued on with different ones. So it seemed pretty limited once they were just stuck with this one. So it was okay. And, but yeah, it was still funny though. There's no doubt in my mind that they had talent because They did crazy stunt work, crazy gags, and all of that. They're really, really funny, and you can see why they were so popular. All right, then the second one was called Why Girls Love Sailors, also from 1927. So I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I thought this one was also funny. I wish there was more screen time of Hardy because they're usually, stars together. And this one, he kind of feels almost like a background character. He's not really in the forefront, which is a little sad to me. And the only funny thing he really does is he's throwing people over the side of the ship because Laurel, once again, is dressed up as a woman. And so what he does is he's sneaking up behind Hardy, smacks him on the head, and then blames it on one of the sailors that he just knocked out too. So then Hardy throws the guy over the rails. It's pretty funny, but they do it like 5 or 6 times. It's a little repetitive, not gonna lie, but still a funny short. It's definitely better than the other one. All right, so then we'll move on to the third one, which is called Putting Pants on Philip. So this is the one that stars both of them, and they're really both the main characters in this. And also from 1927, I gave it a 4 out of 5. I liked it a lot. This was probably the best short, and the one that's like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely going to buy this collection. It was really, really funny. They're both in distinct roles. Laurel, he plays the nephew of Hardy, where he's like a weird kid who's from Scotland, and he has these weird tics. Like one of them is if he sees a pretty woman, he goes and chases her and all that. It's pretty funny. And then Hardy has to, chase him and whatnot. It's hard to explain without watching it. So I highly recommend checking it out. And just the funniest scenes, though, are when, he's chasing a girl and then a huge crowd gets around him and then Hardy has to chase after him. It's really funny. I highly recommend it. All right. Well, that was the third one that I saw. And again, I highly recommend buying this. It's relatively new. The Laurel and Hardy Year One collection. This is newly restored silent films, and this is from Flickr Alley. So definitely check this out. I highly recommend it. All right. So then the next thing that occurred was the Soundies program. And what Soundies were there these little videos that were attached to the music that were in a jukebox. So you paid 10 cents for, I don't know, a famous song of the time. And then on the jukebox, there was a screen and it would play that song and a video along with it. So it's basically the proto MTV, and music videos and whatnot. It was really, really interesting program. Now, obviously, we didn't see it on a jukebox. We saw it on the big screen. But it was really cool seeing all the different singers and all the famous people of the time and even some rare, obscure ones. And what was really cool too was it wasn't just one genre of music. It was everything. You had like Western kind of country music, you had jazz music, you had big band, like you had all these different styles of music. And it was really cool seeing them in this format. I want to say we saw about 12 shorts. I could be mistaken, but the guy who presented it, who I believe was also the author of the book, and I'll have links to that below, about the Soundies. He said there were only about 1,800 of Soundies ever made, and I'm not sure how many of them still exist. But Kino Lorber recently released a collection of them, and I'll also have a link to that as well. That it's a really fascinating thing, learning and studying this rare type of media. It's very, very obscure. Like almost nobody knows about it. I never heard about it until I signed up for this year's Cinecon. I was like, oh, what the heck is a Soundie? So that's the cool thing about Cinecon is so many of these things are very rare and hard to find and very unique and different. And again, the experimental. So many of these haven't been seen since the 40s. So it's really cool event. And what was kind of funny, though, a little sad, but also kind of funny, was the presentation. It wasn't formatted properly. So they had to, shut down the camera and whatnot, or the projector rather. And then they put up the screen, adjusting, please wait, the old fashioned title card that would say, the film reels being adjusted. So I thought that was kind of a nice little touch. But again, it was really cool. They were very professional about it. They got it figured out. And then we were all able to enjoy some pretty great music. So overall, I think my experience with that, I gave it a 4 out of 5. I had a great time with it. And again, it's a really fascinating look into history. How many weird things do we have now? All I could think of were Vine, for example. That doesn't exist anymore. So the clips we have are on YouTube and whatnot. So it's pretty interesting how history kind of repeats itself a little bit. But yeah, I thought it was a great time. All right, so then the next film I saw was called Operation 3 R's, and this was a television movie produced by the US Steel Hour. And what was interesting about this was, like many of the things at Cinecon, this had not been seen since it was originally aired in 1956. And what was really cool was the son of the lead actor in this, he came and talked about it a little bit and kind of talked about how it was basically a family heirloom that he and his brother would watch it all the time. They'd notice all the mistakes in it and whatnot. So it was really like a family heirloom and very precious to them. So it was really cool that they were willing to showcase this. Now, having said that, I gave the film a 3 out of 5. I think the concept of a live television stage play, because this is what it was, the actors were actually moving around and doing all of this. They would change the sets and whatnot. I thought it was a pretty interesting concept. And nowadays we have something similar to that. Like if you've seen there's like a live Peter Pan, a live Christmas Carol, or not Christmas Carol, like Christmas Story and whatnot. I liked some of the actors and some of the secondary, but to me, you could kind of tell it's definitely a television movie and definitely a very, very small production because they only had like 2 or 3 sets, if that. So there wasn't a whole lot they could really do to make it more interesting because it's at an army barracks. That's where it takes place. And basically the lead actor, I don't remember his name, he's trying to teach all these soldiers that have been enlisted the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. As many of them were, they couldn't read, they couldn't write, they couldn't do any of that. So that was his job with this unit, was to teach them how to do that. Now, like I said, there's not too many set differences. So unlike films like 12 Angry Men, where you wouldn't even care if there was different sets, because the acting was so good. It really transcends that. This doesn't have that. It's pretty limited. And again, not too many different camera angles or whatever. It felt very small and definitely like a television movie. So it was fine. The most fascinating part for me, though, were the TV ads that they had along with it. All of them about like appliances and whatnot. It was very interesting to see how different advertising has been since then. But the film itself was just okay. 3 out of 5 is not too bad. I don't know. Well, I don't know if I could ever watch it again. I doubt they'll ever release this, but I don't think it's one, if I had the opportunity to watch again. I think the novelty of it being, obscure kind of wears off after a while. It was like, oh, this is probably why it's obscure. But it was still fascinating nonetheless. And yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it. Okay, so then the next film I saw was called Man, Woman, and Sin. And this film stars John Gilbert. And this was released in 1927. And so kind of carrying on with the silent shorts, there was also a guy playing on the piano along with the whole film, and which was really, really cool. So I gave the film a 4 out of 5. I thought it was really good. I thought John Gilbert, he did amazing here. I don't remember her name, but the actress who played the girl, his love interest, was really, really good. The actress for his mom, who's kind of in it, she's not really, maybe 2 or 3 scenes. She's really good too. Yeah, it was a great film overall. What was interesting about it was, normally you would see like a happy ending, but this one doesn't really have a happy ending. He decides not to marry the girl. He decides to move on with his life and not end up with her. So I thought that was pretty interesting that in 1927 we had a film like this with a story like this. So yeah, I thought it was great. The only reason why I don't give it a 5 out of 5 is I felt that I think there could have been some more character development, especially with John Gilbert's character, because all we know about him is he goes from being a newspaper boy as a little kid to then working at the newspaper company and whatnot. But yeah, I wish we saw more of him and his character development, and also his mom, because she's very important to his character. So I wish we saw a little bit more of her. I think we could utilize her more. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts on Man, Woman, and Sin. So if I were to buy it, I don't know if you can. Probably can. I don't know if I would. Just because it's one of those, it's like, I feel okay never watching it again, if that makes sense. It's not one that's like, oh yeah, I want to watch this again and again. It doesn't have repeat value, if that makes sense. To me, though, the Laurel and Hardy shorts, for example, they do. I'm excited to watch more of them and come back to them. So, yeah, it was okay. 4 out of 5. Okay, so then the next film is called Freckles from 1935. So I gave this movie a 4.5 out of 5. I thought it was excellent. I think it was one of the best ones I saw at Cinecon. I love the actress for the little girl. Her character's name is Laurel. She has an actual bear as a pet. I thought that was great. She's very funny, very spunky. Definitely the comedic relief of the film. And really the star, honestly. I think that she really stole the show, every scene she was in. The actor for Freckles, he was okay. I actually think everyone around him was much better of actors, more interesting than he was. Even his love interest, Mary, who's not in it too much, she was much more interesting than he was. But this is definitely a Depression era film. Everybody's super poor and living in the middle of the woods. And I really appreciated that because I grew up in a rural mountain community. So I really loved seeing all this. In fact, I wonder if they filmed some of it up there. But yeah, it was great. And it really is 100% like this film portrays it. With the exception, we have running water and internet. These guys, they were struggling, making ends meet and whatnot. But it was a beautiful forest that they were in. I do think the title of the movie is a little weird, and I don't understand why his name is Freckles either, because it's not like they gave him as a nickname. They just say that's his name. It's like, that's a really weird name. I think this should have been called, the name of the town that they were in, or something to do with the wilderness or logging or, lumberjacks and whatnot. That would have made a little bit more sense because then you'd kind of know what you're getting into. Because when I heard on the program, the next movie is Freckles, I'm like, what the heck is Freckles? So I think that's kind of why it knocks down points just a little bit. I think the title could have been much, much better. But overall, it was a great film. It's a great, adventure and comedy and whatnot. It was fun. I had a great time with it. Okay, so the last film I saw was called The Hit Parade of 1947. I gave it a 5 out of 5. This was the best film I saw at Cinecon. I loved it so much. Everybody in this has a character arc. Now, I don't remember all the actors and actresses' names, but it was really cool seeing their character arcs. So they're a group of singers and dancers and writers and whatnot that get together and form basically a big band group. But after a while, they decide to kind of split up a little bit and go their different ways. So Eddie, he's a funny character. He ends up being pretty much like a stand-up comedian. And then his love interest, her name is Joan. She becomes more of a singer. And Ellen, who's the main love interest for the main character, Kip, she pursues a career in acting, and Kip, he keeps going forward with his writing. But what was interesting was when they were together, it seemed like they were being, bogged down. And Kip, he's very, commanding and whatnot. He was kind of limiting them and their abilities because he wasn't willing to work together. So when they actually split apart and they developed their own careers, they actually did a whole lot better, and their relationships were much closer as a result. So I thought that was excellent. There's some great songs in this. One of them is called Chiquita from Santa Anita. I really like that song. Ellen sings that one. Roy Rogers and Trigger, they were pretty famous at this time. I believe this is a Republic Pictures, if I'm not mistaken. Roy Rogers sings a song called Is There Anyone Here from Texas? I actually really, really like that song. They're asking people, what state they're from and whatnot. So I really like that song. And then one of the more famous songs is called Oh, Guess I'll Have That Dream Right Away. This is a song Kip writes about Ellen, and it's not meant to be shown to anyone, but when it gets shown and broadcasted, it's actually a really, really popular song and helps his career. And it also helps Joan's career because she becomes famous covering the song. So I really loved it. It was a great film. I don't know if it's available anywhere, but If you want more information about it, the Library of Congress talks about it, and I'll have a link to that in the description. Because I had a great time with it. I wish I could find this. I haven't checked too much, but I'm pretty sure it's not streaming. Definitely not streaming, but for sure it's probably on VHS or something. But yeah, it was a great film overall. All right, well, those are the films that I saw at Cinecon, and I gotta say, it was a great year. I had a great time going and watching all these films and short films and whatnot. I think the coolest thing was definitely the Soundies program. That was a really fascinating piece of film history. The fact that back in the 40s we had a way, it was basically a television set too, and that was relatively new too. So actually, probably the 50s really is when TV kicked off. But I digress. Really cool seeing all of that and learning more about it. And then overall, yeah, the best movie was definitely Hit Parade of 1947. I had a great time watching it, and yeah, it was a great film overall. But yeah, so next year is going to be the 60th Cinecon, so I'm definitely going to that, and I want to bring my wife to it too. She hasn't been able to attend these yet, so I'm excited to take her to it. But yeah, it was a great time. I loved it, and yeah, I highly recommend checking it out. I'll have links to their website, the cinecon.org, and also the Old Town Music Hall. Both are great. The Old Town Music Hall was a great venue, and Cinecon is a great organization. I love seeing these rare, obscure, sometimes really weird movies that you'll never see anywhere else. All right, well, thank you so much for watching this video, and make sure to follow me if you aren't already. And you can follow me at Really Old Movies on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Letterboxd, YouTube, and also Rumble. And I have a podcast called Really Old Movies where I discuss films released between 1890 and 1965. And new episodes for that are released Saturdays at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on YouTube and also on Rumble. All right, well, thank you so much. This has been Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin. Take care.